Hey y'all, it's Morgan. Welcome to my happy place. Doing something a little bit different today, and I just wanted to show y'all. I love sauerkraut, real sauerkraut, not the canned garbage that you find in the store. And I don't like a vinegar-based sauerkraut because that's not real sauerkraut. I like the flavor better of the traditional sauerkraut, but also the probiotic benefits are amazing. Basically, most vegetables and fruits have different bacteria on their skin. That's just like with grapes. You don't wash them and get all the bloom off whenever you're going to make wine, because the yeast that is naturally occurring on the skin of the grapes is part of what you want. Sort of the same thing with cabbage. So let me show you what we will be using today. And my apologies, because I actually have done one head of cabbage when I was like, wonder if I should video this. And my son was like, probably. So everything's a little bit dirty because I'm actually in the middle of the process. So I have 2 heads of cabbage. I've already done one of them. And I use a mandolin for my slicing. I do have a mixer that I can put in an attachment for shredding, but it's loud, and I don't know, to me the cleanup is worse than just doing this manually. You can do it in a food processor or anything like that if you want to. The other thing that we're going to be using is kosher salt. You can use sea salt, I believe. The big thing is you do not want iodized salt. Iodine kills germs and bacteria, and we want the bacteria so that this process can happen. One of the other things, now I'm going to be using a crock for this, but you can use a mason jar. This is my crock. I have some glass weights that I'll show you why we use them, and this has a lid. If you'll notice this indentation, when the lid is in place, you put water in here and it creates it's water seal, and that helps to keep oxygen out. Oxygen is what you don't want for this process. This should be anaerobic, or without oxygen, bacteria that you are encouraging to grow. The other thing I have is a good sharp knife. This is actually my favorite kitchen knife, and my 15-year-old son made this. So it's the sharpest knife I have. But that is basically all you need. Now I am also going to be doing some carrots. I do like fermented carrots too. They're amazing. And for that, I will make a brine. And those will be placed in a mason jar. So if you don't have a crock, that's okay. You can make this in a mason jar, and when I show you how to do the carrots, you'll see. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare this cabbage, and then I'll come back. Okay, so we're back, and let me show you what I've got done here. So I have pulled off the big loose outside leaves of the cabbage. I've cut it into quarters. I've taken the core out. Now this one did have a little bit of surface dirt, so I did rinse it briefly, but I'm not gonna get like really crazy scrubbing it. We want that good bacteria that's on it. Now, excuse me. One of the things that you don't want to do is to discard these leaves. Not yet. We're gonna hold on to those, and I'll show you why in just a bit. So basically, I just take a mandolin, and I'm gonna do this over this right now. I normally do it into the bowl. And I like this because you can change your setting and make it a little deeper for thicker pieces. One thing to keep in mind is with sauerkraut, or anything that you're fermenting really, the thicker the pieces are, the longer it is going to take to ferment. When I'm doing this, I don't really like long pieces. I prefer that they're a bit shorter. The reason for that is just when I'm eating them, they're not draping all over the fork and getting all over me. It's just easier to eat. So I'm going to go through and do this to all of this cabbage, and then I will be back and I will show you the next step. Actually, I'm not going to do all of the cabbage. I'm going to do it a quarter at a time because there is a step that I like to take in between. All right, be back. Okay, so I haven't done, actually I've done half of it. I haven't done a quarter. And the reason is I want to show you what you need to do in between. You don't have to do it in between, but I find it easier. The other portion besides the cabbage, of course, is the salt. Now, I don't measure it anymore, okay? I used to measure. You can do it by weight. You can do it by volume. Basically, it's about a tablespoon. If you look online, I think it's 1 3/4 pound of vegetable. Quite frankly, as I'm doing it, I'll do like a quarter of the cabbage. I'll put it in there, and I'll take, you know, a pretty good pinch of the salt and just kind of sprinkle it over. And yeah, it works out to about the same. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of it, and then I'll come back. Okay, we're back. So I have the cabbage all shredded up. I have poured, sprinkled my salt in there over it. Now the last step, some people will use like a wooden instrument to do this. I just use my hands. It works just as well. But basically you want to get the salt, and you are just, for lack of a better term, you're just squeezing the cabbage with it. The salt helps start bringing the liquid out of the cabbage. And some people, let me see, if you wanted to use a wooden instrument, let me get this wooden spoon. I mean, you can take and like pound it and that kind of thing, but I like doing this because I can feel which pieces are, you know, getting softer and which ones aren't, because you really want to get all of it nice and wilty. That's going to release the liquid. It mixes with the salt, and that is what makes the brine. The reason it's important to have brine is that salt, and I have a couple of big pieces and I'm just kind of tearing them up. The brine is what helps inhibit bacterial growth, unwanted bacterial growth, so that it doesn't spoil or go bad. So having the right amount of salt is important. If you use too much salt, it can actually cause other types of bacteria to grow. It can also slow down the fermentation process. So it is important to at least get close to the right amount. Again, I really don't measure, but I've done this so much that I don't really need to. I can pretty well do it by sight. So this is just sort of a long process. You know, it takes, this is probably what takes the longest. And so I'm going to go through and do this until I'm fairly happy with the amount of liquid that I have. Actually, the amount of liquid is very important, and I'll show you why. But here's the head that I did earlier. As you can see, it's getting translucent. It's kind of wilty. And if I squeeze it, you see all the liquid that comes out of that? And that's what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this ready, and then we'll be back. All right. Okay, I came back a little bit early. Just wanted to tell you a couple of things about making the fermented foods. One of the things is it can take 1 to 2 weeks easily for this to get to the right stage of fermentation. Part of that is going to depend on your environment, how warm it is. So if you just love your fermented foods, you might not want to allow yourself to run out of them. And kind of gauge where you are and make them a week or two in advance. Now, I live in a pretty warm climate. It's mid-90s right now down here. And yes, I run the air conditioner, but it's not like, Arctic conditions by any stretch. So mine will probably, I'd say a week to 10 days, and mine should be ready to go. Now, part of that depends on personal preference, how fermented you like it. And so what you do, after about a week, I'll start checking it. I try not to open the container before that period of time. And I just take a little taste. And if it has the level of sourness that I like, then I go ahead and I generally put mine in mason jars and stick it in the fridge. The refrigerator does not stop the fermentation process, but it slows it down significantly. and it can keep, you know, and as it stays in there, it will continue to ferment, and ever so slightly, the flavors will change. So you will see that as you, you know, throughout each day, or, you know, if you don't eat any for a week or so and come back, it may taste different. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The only time you really need to be concerned is if you start seeing, if it's not, it should be crunchy. When it's done, it should still be crunchy. If it's not crunchy, if it's slimy, if it has an off appearance, if it has like pink mold or anything, just anything, if in doubt, throw it out. Always a good rule of thumb. Now, as far as odor can be a big indicator as to what's going on with it. With the exception for some people of sauerkraut, because sauerkraut is stinky. It's supposed to be stinky. It's cabbage. It is fermented cabbage. It has an odor. When I open a jar of sauerkraut that is perfectly viable, my kids, who are not little babies, they're 15 and 18, they run out of the room because they don't like the smell. It makes my mouth water, go figure. But so just, you know, if you're not sure of what you're doing, you know, of course you can always go online and look and see if there's anything. But if there's any kind of mold or anything that looks concerning, and you're not sure what's going on with it, you can absolutely throw it out and start over. That's the good thing about this. All it is cabbage and salt. It's not that, you know, it's not like you're throwing out a chunk of gold. And that being said, you can add other things to this. One of the things I really enjoy is shredded carrots added to it. But this time I'm just doing plain sauerkraut. So just cabbage and salt, and that's it. So you can see how much more wilted this is. The volume is much less. And look at the, I don't know if that was in the shot, how much liquid is coming out of that. All right, so I'm not going to stop it. I'm just going to turn around and wash my hands, and I'll grab the crock. So sorry about the noise. All right. And one thing to notice is that cabbage had almost filled this rather large crock bowl that I have. And now, as you can see, it is significantly less. So I'll move that to the side. My helper, oops, sorry y'all, he moved the crock for me. All right, now let me wipe that up. If this is not enough brine, if it didn't make enough brine, we can make some and add it. Frankly, I've never had to do that. You can let it sit overnight and it may continue to make more brine. But it's hard to tell in that bowl how much we really have. Let me just get some of this out of the way. Okay. And I'm gonna try to get this where you can see. I don't know if this little tripod will cooperate. All right, maybe that'll work. Okay. So I'm just going to, here, let me do this. I'm just going to just take it and plop it in. Nothing to it. And I'm just spreading it around down there, making sure it's kind of going everywhere. Okay, dogs are playing. 3 Chihuahuas, they're playing in the kitchen, and it's stinking adorable, but they may get loud. It is a mama dog and her 2 baby girls. All right, and once I get this in here, I do have 2, it's glass weights that came with this, and I will use that to hold it down. But like I said, there is a way of doing that without a crock, without the glass weights, and I will show you how to do it. This may not make as much brine as I had hoped. Let me show you what we're working with. Now, of course, there's some that's been going in there, but that is what is left of the brine. And in here, now I have not compressed this. You really take and you press it down quite hard because you want to get as much of the air out as you can, and you also want to make sure that it is going to be completely submerged beneath the brine. So let me pour this in. Okay. And get all this out of the little trough. I'll have to come back and clean that up. Okay. And it might work. It's getting better. I'm really pressing hard, which also helps press more of the liquid out. And as the salt kind of works with it a little bit, it'll pull more and more. Let me see where we are. No, that is not going to be enough. And I'm really putting quite a lot of pressure in here. It's kind of my workout, I guess. Okay. All right. Well, better. It's still not quite where I want it, but it's definitely better. All right. Let me show you what we've got. Let me wash my hands first. Just kind of rinse them off. Okay. Now I showed you just a second ago how much or how high that was inside this crock. And as you can see, it is significantly less. I could have gotten this in my smaller crock, I believe. Let me see. Okay. Now, remember earlier I told you not to throw away those large outer leaves. Well, this is why. Whenever you have any of this exposed to air, it is in danger of rotting. So we want to make sure that it is completely covered. I will use, let me see if I can get to it. So I will use one of these leaves. And I'm just kind of separating it, making sure these like bad spots, I'm just kind of pulling those off. And when I was saying that the, you know, if it has anything that is concerning as far as mold, to throw it out, that is absolutely true. Now, sometimes when you're in the process of making this, there is a yeast that can form, and it is not detrimental. You can eat it and it wouldn't hurt you, but it probably wouldn't taste very good. And it's called con yeast. I want to say KH. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But you can just kind of scoop it off the top, and it doesn't really go down into the bottom. It doesn't cause spoilage. Okay, I still have a little bit that is not under the cabbage leaf. And the easy thing to remember about this is, if you're not sure if enough of it is covered, the saying is, below the brine is fine. If it is under the brine, it is okay. If it is above the brine, if it is sticking out and it looks funky, throw it out. All right, let me see. So here's what we've got. So I've got 2 cabbage leaves that I just kind of layered over the top of each other. Got them where the surface of all of the shredded cabbage, make sure it's, yeah, is covered. Okay, and so now I'm just going to take my glass weights. There's 2 of them. They're in half, so I'll put that on top there. And I'll slide that one in. So, well, get in there. So that they are holding everything down below the brine. Now I'm actually going to press on that pretty firmly because I want to make sure as much brine as I can get out of there. Now see how on top of the cabbage leaf and under the glass you can see that there's brine? That's enough. The shredded cabbage is most definitely covered. So I'm going to clean this little moat. And that will hold some water, and that is what keeps this airtight. It's like when we have patients with chest tubes and it goes to what we call water seal. It's kind of the same principle. All right, so we put the lid on. You back that up a little bit. Let me get some water in just a little cup. I have my assistant helping me at the moment. He came back in. There you go. That's good. Thank you. All right, and so I'm just going to pour some water, just like that. And that's it. I will leave that for a week before I even start checking it. Oh, sorry, that was loud. And you may, sometimes you will see, like if you have a crock, the lid may kind of, it starts, as it starts fermenting, it produces carbon dioxide, and so it can kind of cause this to sit. If that happens, just kind of wiggle it, let it resettle, and just add more water, and that's it. And I will be back in a few minutes, and I will show you how to do a brine and do the carrots and how to do them without a crock. All right, welcome back. We're going to do some fermented carrots. What I have is, I have a quart of water. I have salt. Now, you need a 2% brine. So basically, if you're doing it by weight for a quart of water, which for a 2% brine, you would need, was it 19 grams of salt, non-iodized. That's important. I don't have a scale at the moment. The batteries are dead, and it's a battery I don't normally have around the house. So I cheated a little bit. You can do, for kosher salt, it's roughly 6 grams per teaspoon. So I have just a little bit over a tablespoon here. You just pour it in your water, and then you're going to stir it until the salt is dissolved. Now, this may not be enough. I may need to make some more brine. Not sure yet. But while we kind of let this dissolve a little bit, I'll move it out of the way. And here's what I have. I have just a mason jar, canning jar. And I actually have an old pickle jar. And I think I've used these a lot, actually. Not that particular one. It still has a label on it. But I have here, I just have little baby carrots that are already cut and peeled and all that. I'm not concerned about cutting them into sticks and that kind of thing. And that's pretty much it. I just kind of pour them in. Nothing terribly scientific about this part of it. I guess if you wanted to rinse them, you could, but I don't really think that there's a need, so that's not going to fit. All right, so I'm going to take some of these out, and I'll put them in my other one. Now, you want there to be enough space because you're going to need weight to hold these down. And what we're going to use for weight, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to show you how to do this without the special weights, but I just happen to have ordered some before and have used them in the past, and I really like them. Let me see if I can find them. These are made, they're out of clay, and they have, I'm not sure what it is actually over them, that does not hold on to smell, and you just wash them and they're fine. And I got these off of somebody in one of my little Facebook groups for fermentation, and they work awesome. So that will actually just sit in there to hold everything down. But I'll show you how to do it if you don't have that. So let me see, my salt is just about dissolved. Okay. So now I'm just going to pour this in, and I'm going to make a mess with this. I always do. Ooh, maybe not. All right, and again, you want it covered. Below the brine is fine. So what I will do is see how they like to rise up, so you need to hold those down. Oops, I will use this when I'm done with this little demonstration. But what you can do is take just a plastic bag, and actually I'll need to take a little bit of that out for the moment. Well, can't get that happy medium. There we go. And I will put that in here, and you want to make sure when you're done that there's no open surface area. Sorry, let's try that again. All right, now I'm going to use brine. You could just use water, but I'm going to use brine to pour into this bag. That is your weight. And if this bag happens to develop a leak because it is brine, it is not going to contaminate, or make this so that it's not the 2% brine and then leave you at risk of having it rot. And that's really it. I just kind of fold this down over the top because that has that helps keep all the air out. It allows room for when the gases start to escape. It can kind of come up and come over the side. You can leave it like that. You can actually put your little ring on here if you'd like, which is not a bad idea, especially if it's not tightened down really, really hard, so that the gases can still escape. And you could even put the little lid in there just to help prevent evaporation. But to be honest, there's not much to it to just come and top it off if you need to. Or you could even just lay something on top of it and it would help with that. So that's really it. Not much to it. You'll see when it starts fermenting, you'll start seeing little bubbles rising. And again, when you get it to the degree of fermentation that you like, when it tastes right to you, put a top on, take this out, put a top on it, stick it in the fridge, it will slow it down. And these are so good, I cannot even tell you. Another one that I really, really like is onions. Slice them thin, put them in a jar, put a 2% brine on them, and they are absolutely so good. They just taste like pickled onions. Now, percentages of brine. For things like this, for carrots and things, 2% is usually good. If you're doing old-fashioned pickles and you want to do the fermented ones, you can do, they say 3.5 to 5%. I would go with 5. I've done them before, and the 5% is less likely to spoil and they taste good. So the only other thing, peppers. Peppers tend to mold really, really easy. They actually need a 10% brine. So if you want to try to ferment something, I say go for it. The more experimentation you do, the better. But to try to keep your losses down, go online, look at some of the different charts. It'll tell you which ones are 2%. I think almost everything except for peppers and cucumbers can be done at a 2% brine. I have done like cauliflower, carrots, the whole thing mixed together, and it is so delicious. One of the things I will add to this that I didn't show yet is garlic. I will put a lot of minced garlic in it. I do also find that, oh gosh, y'all, the little cherry tomatoes with some fresh basil leaves, put that in and let that ferment. Those are so good. The tomatoes actually take on a fizzy quality, and they are like little exploding cherry pickles in your mouth. They're really, really good. But basil is really good with those. And the possibilities are endless. Go online, look for some recipes, but try it. It can do nothing but benefit you. There's absolutely nothing that can harm you unless you eat something that is obviously gone off. And I think, pretty much everybody would be safe enough with their food to not allow that to happen. All right, guys, I'm going to get to it and finish this up. I hope y'all have a good night. And if you try any of this, let me know how it goes. All right, bye.